Hello, welcome to the BWI Live Show. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. That's Nate Bauer. It was a very interesting day yesterday for the Penn State Nittany Lions, officially into the next era of college football. And even as we sit here today, Nate, it is a very fluid situation with the Penn State football staff and the roster and the bowl game. As I was making our rundown today, there's some new stuff to talk at the top of the show about. But primarily what we're going to do today is we're going to get your thoughts and reactions to what happened yesterday in the Pat Kraft, Neely Bendapudi, Matt Campbell press conference, and then just give our impressions about, where things stand and where they go. And of course, later in the show, we're going to give our look to the future, because there's roughly 3 weeks for Matt Campbell to assemble the next wave of Penn State football. He's got about 3 weeks to figure out probably 3 months worth of decisions, and we're going to see how he does during that compressed timeline. But Nate, first off, welcome. How are things on your end of the world?
Hello. They're great. How are yours?
I'm just going to start here with this thing. And it's, I don't, because everyone just says fine, right? Everyone's like, hey, it's fine, it's good. And I've never been a person that's just been like, oh, that's fine. I feel like there's never enough days. I feel, sympathy for Matt Campbell and his situation of like, the number of things I want to know right now and the number of things I want to do right now. There's never enough time in a day to get everything done. So it constantly feels like I'm behind. So I wake up every single morning being like, what do I need to do and how do I prioritize it? But besides that, I am well. Christmas is in the future, and Zoe's her main present has been secured. So I feel a little bit better on that front.
That's really good. I think there's, this is certainly from a fan perspective too. I think there's this desire to know things that haven't yet happened, right? And
yes.
So it's like what's the coaching staff going to be? And I was told this ahead of time, and I'm not saying that Matt Campbell didn't arrive at Penn State or didn't take the job at Penn State with an idea of guys, on his coaching staff that he wanted to bring with him. But I truly think, and maybe this makes me a sucker, I don't know. I think he's coming into it with an open mind. Of, hey, like his intent yesterday was to meet the team and to meet and confer with coaching staff. And so today is about meeting everybody that works in the Lash building. And that's all the assistant coaches. That's all the support staff and personnel. That's everybody. And go through, right? Just do these kind of rapid fire interviews of what do you do here? And right, how important are you to the operation? And in what ways do you mesh with, what's next? And so I do think that, it's certainly the news this morning about Ty Howell. Ty Howell wasn't going to be, or probably wasn't going to be, Matt Campbell's offensive coordinator. So, This was agreed upon, I think, throughout Penn State. Nobody's going to have hard feelings about Ty Howell going to Virginia Tech to become its offensive coordinator. That's
what I wanted
for him. That's a great step up in his career.
That's what I wanted to ask, and of course, that's what we were talking about in the chat. Some of the things that happened before Ty Howell's a huge hit tight end room about to get rated, and there was a little bit unclear in what I read this morning. So I just want to clarify: like he is on track to be their offensive coordinator. He's on the staff. There was some I wasn't quite sure about the verbiage of that, but that's what you're saying here is that he is in line to be the offensive coordinator at Virginia Tech.
Penn State co-offensive coordinator Ty Howell is leaving the Lions for Virginia Tech. Maybe that doesn't mean he would be the offensive coordinator. I mean, I guess the wording leaves that open to interpretation. So sure, I'm open to being wrong on that. I was under the impression initially that was probably what the step up was going to be, but either way, the idea that he has a sure thing waiting for him at Virginia Tech versus, whatever the system is and whatever the arrangements are for Matt Campbell. I think that's okay.
Yeah. I also think there's an overlap in the two programs that have focused on tight ends over the years. And so I'm not saying losing Ty Howell is not a blow to Penn State as a recruiter and as a coach. I think he's been excellent. Obviously, as a letterman, also kind of an added thing there. At the same time, Matt Campbell and his staff at Iowa State have done a good job of developing tight ends, and they've been able to produce at that position. So if there was going to be a conflict, I feel like it might have been at that position. So this might be one of those situations where a lot of people get what they need out of, kind of the movement here at this particular position.
I think there's probably a conversation to be had, and I've had this conversation, right, kind of like externally to the football program, but the amount of money, right? A lot of this is just you've got a pie and how you want to cut it up. And if you're looking at the pie, how much of the pie do you want devoted to the tight end position? Right. In a lot of ways is how I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm just going to do it anyway. How is everyone but me getting to have these conversations with people? This is what I live for. And zero people have asked me about tight end and running back value and conversations about like the value of positions. Because yes, absolutely. I will go on a mini rant here. The reason Penn State doesn't have receivers is because they're expensive. And they have been allocating resources to positions they can win in recruiting and in the portal, which are running back, tight end, linebacker. That's great. LBU, not an expensive position compared to corner, DN, tackle, quarterback. And so here we go. Like, this is a very great conversation to be having, Nate. And if that's what's happening with Matt Campbell and with this staff, Penn State's on the right track, because this is the part of the NFL model that absolutely matters, because it's not about paying players. It is about you have a finite number of resources. You have limitations. And when you have limitations, you have to make choices. And what choices you make determine what you are on the football field. Yep. And that's comprehensive. If I think that there is a little bit of a revisionist history that's happening that I understand, right? And the revisionist history is, why on earth would you devote, and listen, I get it. It depends on what the numbers are that you're talking about, but I'm comfortable, and I've shared this on our message board. I'm comfortable with Penn State's roster in terms of Penn State's spend, money that it had control of, costing between 23, 22, 24, 25, maybe $26 million this year. Okay. 3 of that went to Katron Allen and Nick Singleton. I don't know that everyone else would have done that. Right. That if you've got a blank slate and you're picking and choosing how you want to devote your resources, putting that much into the running back position is not standard fare. That is not what people who organize this.
13% of the roster cap there. If it's 23 million and it's roughly 3, do I have that right?
I mean, there is no.
I'm
cap.
doing this on. No, but I'm saying like what you're saying. Like the cap is what they spend. The cap is, I'm assuming they spend 100% of what they're able to spend. So what I'm trying to say is, it doesn't matter. The number could so that number is incredibly low if you're talking about like the pay of players in football. Because I don't have a reference point, because I'm thinking NFL players make $10 million because their cap is $250 million. It's totally different. But it's the percentage of the cap that we're talking about. And if the cap is just the number they spent, and I'm dangerous here doing math live on TV, but that's 13% roughly, I think, of the cap that they have, or the number they have. That is high. Quarterbacks take up 13% of caps at times, and that is squeezing the rest of the roster in other places if you do that much to one player, one position.
And then you go around the room, right? It's those 2 guys. It is the tight end position, including Andrew Olesh, right? Who was an expensive freshman
player
that they added, right? That wasn't able to contribute this year. And why would you expect him to when you've got Rapp and Dinkins, obviously, those guys are like, you've just got a lot of real resources devoted to Zane Durant, Nick Singleton, Katron Allen, deny Dennis Sutton, which is a position that you are supposed to spend on.
Yes.
Drew Aller, for sure. I'm missing somebody, Zachy Wheatley, for sure. Amari Campbell would have taken some of that. I just Tony Rojas for sure. But the problem with this, and this is where the word revisionist comes in, is nobody objected. Fans or administration or James Franklin or his staff, like nobody got in the way of, hey, we just did this last year, riding most of these players to the playoff semifinal, and they've all decided that they want to come back. We're gonna say no. We're gonna say, you know what, Katron and Nick, the first one who agrees to come back is the one who can come back, and the other one, I'm sorry, but we just don't have those resources for you. So whatever that number is, $1 million, $1.5 million, the first one to take it, that seat is yours. We're happy to have you. We'd love to have you both, but we just don't have this amount. Nobody said that. Nobody said that to Zane Durant. Nobody said it to any of these guys that ended up choosing to come back. And I just, everyone has to own a piece of that. And I'm not sure that's exactly what's happening here. But what's interesting to me is Matt Campbell yesterday, he laid out a scenario at Iowa State that sounded to me a lot like Penn State's situation, which is...
Are you saying his program building philosophy in general, or what he was doing?
He was just saying, and there was kind of a smaller group that was able to meet with him a little bit after the press conference. And he was just saying that Iowa State had no NIL. There was no NIL. And so the strength of their relationships, the strength of their culture, the strength of all of those things that they had built in terms of player development were enough of an appeal that players that they had developed stuck around instead of testing the open market. And what he said was all of those guys that they had would have commanded more in the portal than they ended up getting at Iowa State. Well, that's going to be on a smaller scale than Penn State, but it's the same concept, right?
Yeah.
You could have that same conversation with all of those guys.
This is
Penn
what
State
we talked
paid
about.
Too much.
This is what we talked about when it came to the conversation about their resources and program building and the way that they used their NIL money, because they do have, the revenue shares. They used it to retain players and not go into the transfer portal and buy rosters. And I thought it was interesting that he did emphasize the portal evaluations about nailing those and not shying away from it, but and going and getting key pieces. I guess I'm curious as to, so this is from Rob, and this is kind of going to get into my first comment about Matt Campbell and something I talked about yesterday, but I want to give a little bit more of a fleshed out thought here. He says, I don't want to see Campbell do more with less. I want to see Campbell do more with more. And I think that is the interesting question I have for Matt Campbell and his tenure here at Penn State in the future is sometimes when you have less and you're doing more with it, you then eschew the opportunity for more. You focus on doing more with less instead of maximizing the more side. And I guess I was thinking about this. I thought I had the right way to say it, but basically what I'm trying to say is like, if you're always focusing on not having money and relationships and all these things, like what if you do need to go buy a player? Are you willing to do that? Can you do that? Can you allocate those resources, use those in a semi-mercenary way at times when necessary? And that is the opportunity. I think that's kind of the interesting situation Penn State has is that I don't know that he's about that, but he also seems like a person who has evolved when pressure dictates that. And so, I don't think that the thing that I'm curious about is is he still going to go get the 40th receiver in the transfer portal, or if was the third receiver also a really good fit, but he couldn't afford that player. And so Is the fifth receiver also a fit? And is he going to choose the 40th for the value? And not to say Jaden Knoll or some of the players that he outlined that they got in the portal are not good football players. That's not what I'm trying to say. But if you have to choose, are you going to choose to do less with more, or are you going to try and maximize the opportunity to leverage yourself to where you don't have less? You don't have less than the other player because you found the right player, and maybe even the relationship got you over the line at a number that is slightly competitive with everybody else, but maybe not the most.
Would Matt Campbell search for in the portal and bring in Devontae Ross?
I think so. Yeah,
correct.
Is that a rhetorical question?
That's the right answer. Is he would look for and get Devontae Ross? Would he look for and get Trevor Pena?
How about Nick Marsh? Are you asking me like to Italian of talent? Yeah, because I think both those players are good football players. I think they were miscast and misused at times in the offense. And so both those guys, I think in general, their talent merits being on this roster and merits being targeted by Penn State this past year.
I think the point is by the time that Pena came around, it was a bidding war. It became hey, are you going to go get this big fish or not? And the answer was yes. And that was a collective decision. That was like, there were more people involved than just the football program in saying, hey, still need a receiver. I mean, Pat Kraft said it, like he said it in February. We're still on the market for a receiver if you right. And so how you go about those things is what's at issue here. And it's going to be very interesting to see what Matt Campbell is most comfortable with, because I do think he is very comfortable and very confident in it. There's shades of basketball, right? In terms of, for me, watching what Mike Rhodes does is they're extremely confident in their scout, right? Yannick Conan Niederhauser was a guy that nobody else knew what he could be. And that's true. Like that is as shining of an example as I could give anyone for, hey, there's a guy that is a diamond in the rough, truly. And with Penn State molding that, he can become this. And that's exactly what happened. I think football, that's a hard ask. Right?
It's harder. It's much harder. And I'm not saying there aren't. So it's a little bit disingenuous to say there are more resources in football than in basketball, because that's not true. The competitiveness of football, the insanity of football, just feels like there's so many more eyeballs. There's so much more incentive to do that because you need so many more players that there is just there aren't diamonds, it feels, in the rough anymore in football, feels like. And maybe that's me being wrong, not being as a talent evaluator that's looking at D3 schools and looking at small schools and 7-man football teams in the middle of Iowa. But it just feels like with the digitization of everything, you don't get a lot of surprises anymore. That kind of, there's a reason even those guys that are diamonds in the rough now probably aren't going to the NFL or aren't going to be like the elite of the elite. They're going to be really good college football players that might be super useful, but they're not the player that like goes. There are just so many, there are so fewer, and there's specific reasons why guys maybe are late bloomers or something happens in their career where they're injured or something like that, where then they appear later, as opposed to we just didn't know about X, Y, or Z.
Yeah.
I want to play a little bit of audio if you don't mind, because some of the things that are, let's just get, Matt Campbell said he's not a good self-promoter a couple of times. And I thought the opposite of, like, he laid down his credentials a couple of times, and it was some of the ball coach in him that I think came out, and the competitiveness and the fire that, getting ready for this and the compressed timeline of how quickly all this happened, I went right to the film. I did not watch a lot of press conferences for Matt Campbell. And a lot of what I did hear of him speak was not in like a press conference setting. So I was not prepared for his tone or style on Monday. But here he is talking about his player development and kind of what we just outlined here from yesterday.
Yeah, let's start with the transfer portal to the high school piece of it. I think one of the great reasons being here is, boy, you're in the most fertile ground of the excellence of high school football in a 6 to 8 hour radius. Everything will start with building high school football and continuing to do a great job in this state and our surrounding states. Nobody's going to attack more than us. The transfer portal obviously has become a unique advantage probably in some ways, and sometimes it can be a disadvantage. But I think if you look at our history, the last couple of years, Jaden Higgins was maybe the 40th ranked transfer portal guy, and Jaden Higgins was the #1 receiver taken in the draft last year. You go to, in offensive tackle, Jalen Travis, who was drafted by the Colts, number 40th in the transfer portal, was the first transfer portal offensive tackle taken. We have a process. We know what we're looking for in the transfer portal, and we're going to have to use that to continue to supplement our football team. But we are going to be, and nobody will be better at developing their student athletes and our high school football players better than us. We've proven that every step of the way. I think you can ask Brock Purdy, Breece Hall, David Montgomery, Will McDonald. Man, the flash of the stars, that's cool on signing day. But winning football games on Saturday is what we're going to be about, and that's development. And we're going to have to be better than anybody in college football if we want to get where we want to go.
So that kind of, again, goes back to the more with less conversation versus more with more. And I guess that's I don't doubt in any way, and I want to make this clear, I don't doubt in any way their evaluation. Because you those names that he rattled off there are not just players in the NFL, but standout players in the NFL. You know, Brock Purdy from Mr. Irrelevant to one of the highest paid quarterbacks in football, and being, I think, a difference maker for the 49ers is absolutely a difference maker potential for Penn State. Like to have that sort of pedigree on the and their evaluation doing it at Iowa State, I do think that does translate to Penn State. And so I just generally wonder about the differences, and I hate doing this, Nate. The differences in what, because I would say the same things about James Franklin, like watching the players they offered, and not the players they got, but the players they offered were all like, oh, they knew about these guys before a lot of other programs. Like it would be JMU offers a guy, or maybe Iowa State offers a guy, and then Penn State is right there. Or Penn State would offer a guy, and then a flood of other schools would offer this player who then suddenly blows up as a talent. And so the eyeball of Penn State created a lot of that interest in a prospect. And so I just wonder like how that translates here with this staff, because the development, it feels like, and I guess what I'm trying to say and what I'm trying not to do is like the development aspect of what Iowa State has done has been very impressive, and that number is those players are very specific.
Yep.
Is the development aspect of their staff better than the last one? Because everyone in the chat says no. I don't know that's true. I think that's the biggest question to me: is are they genuinely better at developing talent, identifying and developing talent, and making those guys into NFL players? And the reason NFL matters is because that means that they're the very best in college football that can win you championships.
You're saying that here's what I'm confused about it. You're saying that the chat is saying that the last staff was better at developing talent?
No, that everyone thinks James Franklin was bad at developing talent. They would get stars and they would not do anything with them. And I disagree with that. I think they did a good job of developing talent. But is this staff exceptional? Like, is that a defining trait of the next generation of Penn State football players that are going to be developed into that it's going to elevate the program above where it has been? Like, is that the missing piece here? Because I would say that all those things that he outlined is something Penn State has been in the same conversation with Iowa State in those things.
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think that perceptions are overwhelmingly shaped by the quarterback position and specifically Drew Aller. And so everyone is in a lot of ways going to say to themselves, Drew Aller is not ending his college career as the number one quarterback in college football, and therefore he didn't get any better. And this year, I get it. The previous 3 years, I don't quite get that. I think clearly he was better last year than he was the year before. And he was better last year than he was as a freshman. But that's neither here nor there. On the whole, I think that the numbers bear out that if Matt Campbell's staff can be as good as James Franklin's staff at that development piece, Anthony Donka, Vega Ioane, look, there is it might not be smacking you in the face because it's not the quarterback. And just to tie a bow on the quarterback situation, so much of that perception is built on the fact that James Franklin had 3 quarterbacks in 12 years.
Hey, you want to know something? Matt Campbell's had 2 in 10. I think primarily 2 quarterbacks have started 4 years for him each. So same thing.
Yeah, no, that is a trust thing. He talked about it being, that quarterback needs to be tied at the hip to the head coach. All those things are fine, but all of it leads to the road. And this is, to me, what is the final frontier is if you swapped James Franklin for Matt Campbell and get literally the same output, right? Or in the ballpark, right? You're trading pieces here and there, but overall that 95% of what college football is until game day, if that 95% is about the same, my question, and I think what is about to be put to the test and what on first glance should lend some confidence to Penn State fans is how do they close that 5%? What does that last 5% look like in games? Game planning, game execution. Like, how does the actual 60 minutes of the football game transpire? Because nobody can argue with Chuck Losey's and Penn State just as a program. Going back to Dwight Galt, freaks. They develop absolute athletic freaks at Penn State. If Matt Campbell can continue that tradition and keep that going, that's a huge check mark for Penn State. If they can continue to develop at Terry Smith, right? All the things that he did and has done at the cornerback position, the things that tight end, you name it. I mean, it just, there has been a ton of evidence of players getting better through their careers at Penn State. That Matt Campbell has demonstrated to do the exact same thing or similar things, very similar things with the same type of pieces at Iowa State. In fact, lesser pieces. So, but once you get to the finish line, can you get it over can you win the game? Can that double overtime not end in an interception? Can it be a win? And the reality for Franklin, for as many things as he did that went well at Penn State, is they just didn't win. They just and that's right. It seems so simple, but some of those results have to be different.
Yeah. So one of the things that I think there is you nailed 2 things here. Let me rephrase it. If all things are equal, 95% of it is the same, but the quarterback development, and I know that that's an unfair thing. Like we just outlined, maybe it's not fair because of the short nature of the evidence. If Drew Aller is developed in a certain way, he leaves as a junior and goes in the first round of the NFL draft. Junior,
he should have.
Yeah.
He should have left.
Right. And so you would have had that piece, but generally, if the quarterback development is slightly better, that is part of that 5%.
Totally.
And that is a huge part of that. The thing I think is interesting that you also bring up is just through ignorance here of not knowing kind of the history or the I think there's a little less evidence of the physical development from Iowa State players.
Yeah,
and so, like, I know it's a known with Chuck Losey, so I'm more confident in the football development and less confident in the athletic development, and that's a big thing. Like, because he's had 3 different strength coaches at Iowa State. How does that? What is that decision here? I think is massive. And Nate, we need to make a quick decision because we're 30 minutes into the show. And here's the thing: is like I was like, oh man, hopefully Nate and I can fill an hour of conversation about yesterday.
Oh,
because like my rundown, I didn't feel like I wasn't confident in. Like normally, I needed to tickle the second page before I'm like, okay, we got enough to talk about, and we haven't even gotten through 3% of it. Ryan says, is Campbell going to build a national recruiting footprint? I hear a lot about 6 to 8 hours. Hard to win if you don't go outside of that. Here's the thing: is his 6 to 8 hour radius around Ames, Iowa, much less talent, and that's what he was honest about that in terms of this is so talent rich of an area. More people live in the East than they do in Iowa. I don't even know where Ames is. I apologize, but like you also are then competing.
Dare you?
You're also then competing with Ohio State, Michigan, Notre Dame, and Georgia if they want to come into the East Coast, into New Jersey and DMV. Of course, James Franklin at Virginia Tech now, a part of this competition for those resources. So it's not just about the depth of the talent. It's then competing for that talent and making sure that you can get some of it. Because, again, if he's talking about we have to find the right fit and he's not talking about stars and all those things, like the reason those players are evaluated that way is because they have the NFL physical potentials. And so I guess that's, again, where he's going to say, like, we know the difference between fool's gold and what you actually need to prioritize in a football player. And it's going to be interesting to see when he doesn't get a 5-star and fans get angry about that. If that's going to be part of, like, the case against Matt Campbell that some people are building throughout the next, how long? 5 years? 6 years? I don't know.
Well,
tell me, before you do that.
Yeah.
We need to talk about beer. That was an open-ended question.
Great.
That was not necessarily for you. I need you to tell me about Anti-Fragile Brewing Company in downtown State College because it's been a couple weeks since the end of the season. I miss it. And so tell me about Anti-Fragile.
Same. I miss it as well. I haven't been down there in a couple of weeks, and it breaks my heart. Anti-Fragile Brewing Company is on East Calder Way in downtown State College. If you have a designated driver, there's plenty of parking, and you are going to want to get there any way that you can get there because it serves the best home brewed, in-house brewed. Literally, you're looking at it right there on if you're looking at the YouTube feed. Like they brew the beer in the building that you then drink out of the tap, and it is exceptional beer. I'm not a beer connoisseur, but I do like to dabble in things that are elevated a little bit above Miller High Life, right? And the offerings.
Are you saying that you're not a dude? Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not fair. That's not fair. Dudes drink hazy IPAs, and they have a ton of hazy IPAs on their menu, and they're all awesome. It's just really good beer. And then you're washing down the best cheesesteaks in State College that are served outside at Uncle John's. Like the combination is just really not beatable in State College. I'm a food guy. I'm a drink guy. I like all of those things. I see the comment in the chat. I'm not knocking Miller High Life. It's got its time and place. It is the champagne of beers. But if you want the best of the beers,
you want the
where it is.
Yeah, I don't know champagnes well enough to say like there's different varieties of champagne as well. You can get the champagne that is basically grape juice with fuzz, or you can go get the nice stuff, the brut, and the stuff that my wife likes for New Year's Eve. So go see them. And here's my challenge to our audience here. It's one thing in the season when everyone's coming into town to go see Anti-Fragile and say hi and tell them you saw them, talked about us on the show. It's another thing in the off season. So if you are in town, or maybe you want to take a trip to State College because this is a place that people just want to come to anyway. People just like coming here to visit. In the off season, make sure you walk in, you buy a beer or a cheesesteak, and you say you heard it here on the show. And because we want to support them. This is a very seasonal town, so when people come for football games, everyone's happy, and then there's times of the year when everyone gets a little leery and starts looking around, and we want to support our local businesses throughout the entire year.
They're also just one of my favorite places to be. Like, I love going down. It's just an excellent experience. It's like it is my favorite thing in the world that they sponsor our show, because there's like I don't have to fib. I don't have to be like, oh man.
Isn't it great when you believe in what you're selling?
Yeah, this shirt is so comfortable. No, it's not. Their beer is actually awesome. I love it.
Yeah. This from Go Birds DH. This is from the chat, just getting us back into the conversation. He says, hey, guys, thank you for all the work over the 50-plus day search. Nate did a great job with that for us at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Reminder to go subscribe because it's not over. There's more staff changes, portals coming up. This is actually going to be the busier part in terms of bang bang news coming out. And you want to stay up to date? Go to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. Here's the thing. I was having a conversation with Greg yesterday. I can't keep up with everything. And so I have to go to the board, and because I can't text Nate every 10 minutes, be like, hey, what's going on? What do we need to know? And share information. So go to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, because that's the depository of all of the information, our shared knowledge about what's going on with Penn State football. I'm doing evals of the Iowa State roster. We're going to be doing some more stuff about the offensive and defensive coordinator when those are named. So make sure you go to the site and you check that out. Of course, subscribe here to the YouTube channel. Like this video. There's a ton of people watching. A lot of you probably are new because it's a new era and you're suddenly interested because James Franklin's face drove you away, maybe, because like that's a natural thing that happens. Again, no offense to anyone involved, but that's just how it happens, right? And so there's a new coach, and everyone's excited. Subscribe here to the YouTube channel. We're going to bring you an hour-long discussion Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays for infinity. Like, I don't have a life. This is what I do. I don't have kids. I sit around and think about football. That's about all I do. Right. So we're going to be here every single week of the year, maybe not Christmas week. To Go Birds DH's question, was wondering about the recruits we can possibly get back from signing day. Keemon Spell ? Keemon Spell is a class of 2027 recruit. He is not a 2026 player, so that's not necessarily. It's very important, and Matt Campbell even established that getting those ties and making sure that you can get in on those players for 27 so you don't lose two classes is absolutely critical, but that would not be the player that you're thinking of for the class of 2026 specifically. So getting back into that, Terry Smith, keeping him around, huge reason why that's going to happen if it does happen for Penn State. The second thing is, Z-Man in the chat here, I don't have it right away, but a bag of money, that's going to be a part of that as well. And then thirdly, I do think that there are some things they can do with the class of 2026 between then and now that are a possibility, including guys from Iowa State. But the players that left, for the most part, especially the ones at Virginia Tech, those are gone. Like, what happened to the class of 2026, I think, is pretty much decided. And you're not going to bring back players that don't have a relationship with this coach just because Penn State has a new coach. So no, I don't think that there's a lot you can do with the class of 2026. I could be wrong. Ryan and Fitz are going to talk about that on the Thursday recruiting show, so make sure you tune in for that as well. But Nate, I do want to shift this into the focus of the conversation about Pat Kraft and how the search went out and how the search went down. We haven't really discussed that, and we haven't discussed the leaked audio from last Thursday. We didn't really have it happened after our last show, and then almost immediately we went into, hey, they're about to sign a coach, so we didn't really have a space to talk about that until today. So I'm going to start with two pieces of audio here, and I'm going to try and play them back to back. The first is, this is my opinion of, I think in his opening statement, Pat Kraft said, I'm sorry to fans twice, because one of the things that he said in that video was, I don't really care about what the fans think. And to his credit, mostly what he was saying is they're not going to determine who the next head coach is. We got to make the right decision. But here he is saying the second time, hey, you guys are great.
Our fans, and I reiterate, our fans, the absolute best in the country. You deserve a team that plays with fire, passion, and purpose.
Secondly, here he is just giving the apology after asked about the leaked audio.
I'm very passionate and I'm transparent with my athletes. I tell you, with my kids and my student athletes. What I will tell you about that is that I'm embarrassed. I apologize to anyone that I may have offended with that video that leaked. Personally, it's been challenging for me, but I am very passionate about Penn State, and it was 9 or 10 football players that asked want to come in and sit down, and we had an open and honest discussion. But I fell short of the standard that I should represent for all those people, all my staff that sits up there, all 833 athletes that I represent.
So this from Blizzle84. I do not trust Pat Kraft. I think that, a lot of what's happening here is the length of the search, 54 days, I think it was. That particular part of this conversation has painted a perception and a narrative about how things went down. And I just want to give you a chance to respond with your thoughts about the situation of how Pat Kraft handled yesterday and, of course, the search overall. But let's start with that leaked audio and how you think he handled that yesterday.
Yeah. I'll be just hand up. I didn't listen to it. I feel uncomfortable just being somewhere I'm not supposed to be. And
listening to a private conversation that was recorded without consent.
Yeah.
I listened to it. I felt the same way. I listened to it, though.
Yeah. I'll be honest. I mean, I had conversations about what happened in that meeting before that audio came out. So I had a general idea of some of the things that he said, and importantly, and less of the story, some of the things that the players said, right? Which, for as upset as they were after James Franklin got fired, that was not necessarily reflected in how they spoke about him in that private meeting. So there was a little bit of an issue of when the first version of that leak came out, it being all cut up and it mostly being Pat Kraft talking. That didn't necessarily reflect accurately some of the things that players said in that meeting that I'm not entirely convinced they wanted to be public. Right.
Well, it was very clear that it was a one-sided leak that was not necessarily done for journalistic reasons. That was there was an intent behind leaking that audio.
Yeah. Which is fine. I just personally, like, I was offended that he didn't swear more. I'm kidding.
Is that what people? So here's the question that I want to ask. Who's he apologizing to and for what? Because, is it the swearing? Because I don't think a lot of people who are honest with themselves think a former linebacker who spent his whole life in coaching and in football ecosystems think that, these men, as much as many of them present themselves and say that they are these religious people, I'll say that part, don't use the F-bomb all the time. Having been around football, swearing is woven into the fabric of the culture because it is an intense sport and there is a lot of intense emotions that happen at all times. To me, Nate, I think he's more apologizing to the other people in his profession.
Yeah.
He just can't say that, talking about other people's money, talking about other rosters, saying things that maybe is known in the AD world, but isn't known to the world, and now they have a better insight into it. I think that there was a little bit of the betrayal of that smaller circle that matters more to him than it would be he has a potty mouth. But that's just
yeah. No, I think that's a great point. I am sure that his interactions professionally with Oregon's athletic director or Notre Dame's or Michigan are all very cordial, right? But there's just a naivete to all of this. Man, people talk stuff, right? They say stuff, and I do think that there's a valid argument to be had, where people don't understand. He's had these conversations with women's basketball, right? Women's volleyball, right? Where it's hey, here's this extra voice that is the highest boss, right? Saying, look, this is what you represent. This is what the standards are at Penn State. And I'm going to put it back into focus for you if it's not already, right? Which is can be a blunt and brutal thing. It really takes away the Disney after school special that this is just a sport that everybody participates in for fun and to get exercise. This is business.
And for building better characters. Yeah.
Well, and part of your character is going to grow based on being yelled at very forcefully by the athletic director. But it's look, he apologized. I don't think he feels bad about it. I don't think he's going to stop doing it. I think that those types of conversations are things that you expect to remain private because it's an open dialogue, and that's how they're speaking back at you. I mean, there's a larger conversation to be had here where, like, the F word is like saying
Yeah.
It's like saying the or like. Right?
Yeah.
It's a verbal filler at some point in those.
It's also an adjective
spheres.
to express emphasis. It is an emphasis.
Instead of saying very.
Yeah.
Right.
I think that there's I guess to me, the thing that I thought was interesting is saying out loud it was a select group of players. And this is just, I know that this is a very obvious thing to say, but sometimes I have to say the obvious things because it was not obvious to the person who leaked the audio that if there's only 12 people in the room, it makes it a little bit easier of a game of Clue to figure out who leaked the audio, especially based on if you're listening to the audio, who speaks and where their voice is bouncing off of the room. Like you don't have to be a FBI investigator to listen to that and know Tony Rojas is off in the distance, and you can hear you can hear Anthony Donko off in the distance. So those two are out from who's sitting next to the recording. That's not a very smart thing to do. I don't think that it's a very smart thing for somebody to do that. But I don't know that that's necessarily even the point of any of this. Like, I just thought, like, oh, that's really stupid if that's going to be the what you did.
Well, let's. I'm willing to go down this road a little bit.
Okay.
Probably not to the full extent, but I'll say a couple of things here. One is Pat Kraft firing James Franklin in a lot of ways in itself creates a power vacuum. James Franklin had a ton of power at Penn State. He was the face of the Penn State football program. And guess what? Yesterday was Matt Campbell's coronation. He now has a ton of power at Penn State. He has a ton of power as the face. Like, it just comes with the job. But not only does it come with the job, it comes with the accumulation of time. And in Franklin's case, all the little battles that he won, right? Facilities battles, compensation battles, you name it. Like, there were a lot of chess pieces that moved over the years that put James Franklin in a position to have that power. When Pat Kraft fired him, that opens the door. Yep. And so at that point, as this is happening, as Pat Kraft is doing a search, and it is him. He didn't hire a search firm. Right? It's him and his team, his staff, directing this search. As they're conducting that search, there were a few parameters that Penn State fans kind of demanded. One was that it not start and end with Matt Rule.
Yeah.
Check. Did that. Cast a wide net. Be open to a bunch of different options. They interviewed dozens and dozens of candidates.
Can I just...
Bobby Ingram
I know you
got an interview.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
And this is the part where I think that there is why your reporting is important, and reporting is important. Not every name was offered the job, and not every name 100%. Was a candidate even on the list afterwards. And so, like, I think this is what we were talking about, I think, on the show a couple weeks ago, of the perception of them flailing is because they were being so thorough and interviewing so many people, down to Urban Meyer should absolutely not be a candidate for Penn State football, in my opinion. Like, that is insane. That is a ridiculous idea to bring in somebody who, if you want to, like, we talk about culture, we talk about fit, we talk about all these things about what matters to Penn State fans, and then half of them are like, get Urban Meyer, and I'm like, what do you actually want other than just to win and feel good? Because that doesn't make any sense. But they interviewed him. So then there is this perception of, well, you missed on Urban Meyer, just go hire him. And then the just go, just do becomes the narrative of the search, as opposed to, we're going to eliminate more people than we're going to hire. Everyone does that, but we're going to eliminate a lot of people in this search. And I'm not trying to give cover to Pat Kraft that everything was done perfectly. I don't think that. But I think that there is a wide gulf between how much of a cluster it was and how much it was perceived to be.
Yeah. I think that people got uncomfortable with the timing. Honestly, this is part of how the ecosystem warps things a little bit, right? Kind of some of the chatter, some of the things that are said surrounding the Penn State football program, where they're just people, right? Like and it's not to denigrate fans who are excited about the search or excited about things, but like, they weren't going to hire somebody by Halloween. Like, that was not a possibility.
Right.
That was never, ever.
They're all still coaching. They're all still coaching. They all have jobs. That was the whole point.
So the timeline was always after the end of the season, right? The end of the regular season was where you could shoot for. It got more complicated by the more people that got themselves into conference championship games, and then complicated further by the possibility of playoff teams. So went through that process, did the whole thing, and through it, Satake from BYU emerged. Like, that's who they liked. It was different. It was a bold choice. I don't have
from a football perspective, and for like having done some research on him, it would have been a good fit. Like, again, culturally, there's a lot of crossover between him and Matt Campbell in terms of like the dude they are, with obvious differences in their personalities and their approaches, but generally, like, they landed on that mold. Matt Campbell kind of fit it. So like it makes sense. There's a lot of overlap there, but yeah, again, a good coaching hire. It would have been a quality fit.
Right. So all of this is, and I'm reading some of the comments here, and like, I get it. Penn State had a high interest in Mike Elko, and there was enough reciprocation that it kept going, right? And it went into November. Didn't happen. Okay.
Right.
This is still a little bit unclear to me, but like, the next guy was Brent Key, and I don't know that it ended up being an offer to him. They just figured out that it wasn't a fit. The issue, all of this, is the first 7 weeks, or first 6 weeks, really, because the last 2 weeks were invested into getting Satake over the line. The first 6 weeks, I don't really see how people can judge it. They did all the things that they tried to do by casting that wide net and narrowing in on a candidate and then trying to close the deal. The issue, and the thing that is absolutely warranted for criticism, is they got their pants pulled down on television, and that's not good, right? The guy left them at the altar. They thought it was done. They thought it was an agreed upon. Like, he was the guy that wasn't going to do that, and then he did it, right? And so that became very, very problematic, that Penn State was not able to get that over the finish line. 100% criticism. Like, your job was to identify the candidate. You did that. That's good. Then you got to close it. You failed. You didn't do that very well. That was not good. That was not good. Now, here's the back. And this is why I live in shades of gray and everybody hates me for it sometimes. But yes, that's a big strike. That's a big demerit to miss. But also, turning around from Tuesday afternoon was when Satake said he wasn't going to come. To go from Tuesday afternoon to a Wednesday night, late night, as described yesterday, a Wednesday night interview with Matt Campbell, right? So put him on the radar where he had not been previously based on previous interactions that said he wouldn't be interested, that was not a road to go down. To go from that on Tuesday to the interview on Wednesday to seeing him in person on Thursday to closing the deal with literally a signed DocuSign by Friday night is incredible given the context of the guy that you're talking about. Matt Campbell turned down not necessarily bigger jobs in Penn State, but certainly on par, right? NFL jobs, other big college jobs. He has had opportunities through his career, and this was one that people had a shared understanding through the industry that this was like a tough guy to get out of those waters. It was a hard fish to land. And so the fact that they were able to get that over the finish line, even understanding the package of resources that Penn State can offer him and how that doesn't compare to Iowa State, like that's fine. You can have that conversation. There is a very big difference between it being a no-brainer to Penn State fans and it being a no-brainer to Matt Campbell. And the fact that they were able to make it a no-brainer for Matt Campbell and get his wife and his kids and the whole family to do that in that short of a time span is it's the counterpoint.
Hey, Nate,
and so it's why you have to live in that area. Oh, sorry.
Can everyone else hear Nate?
Hello?
This is a great way to end an awesome show.
Anyway,
I just have completely lost audio. I apologize.
okay.
With that, okay, everyone else can hear him. Nate, keep going. I'm going to address that problem separately. So here's what we're going to do. I do want to get to what's next. This is the last thing that I want to talk about is we do have to get to this. I promise this because there's 3 weeks and Penn State has to make a lot of decisions. So Nate, what's the next step for Matt Campbell?
What is the next step is to hire staff and then hire the staff. T. Frank, you put it on me. You put it on yourself. Anyway, it's hire. Yeah, there you go. It's hire staff, and then once you have the staff in place, or close to it, feel good about a staff, do the evaluations, and get your team. There has been this, and I was part of it, so I'll like hand up. The emotions of players and their families in October is not necessarily the emotions of players and their families now. And that was a thing. And that includes up to and including last week when Terry Smith was still very much a possibility, right? Where like you saw all the plane flying the banner and all of that stuff was in support of Terry Smith, but also before there was an actual human being that they could put in front of these guys in the team room, in the team auditorium, and for him to give them the talk that he was able to give them yesterday and outline in a short elevator pitch what his view is and perception of the program. So now that they have that in front of them, it becomes a more of a two-way street. And some of the feedback that I got yesterday is the kids liked it. The players liked it. They enjoyed what he had to say. They were inspired by what he had to say. It's not to say that everybody's going to stay. It's not to say that everybody's going to have the opportunity to stay. But for him, the haul itself is less heavy if you can retain as much of the talent as you want on this team. And guess what? It is a lot easier to convince people to not make a change than it is to make a change, right?
Isn't that the story of the coaching hires?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And that's what it is now that you've got a familiar face in Terry who they wanted to keep anyway, he's sticking around. So the fact that he has that ace up his sleeve in certain respects, there are players and faces around the program, recruiting staff, player personnel staff that are very likely to stay. When you have those ingredients, you can make a stronger pitch to try to retain some of that talent. And I think he will. And I think it will be, I can't even say I think it'll be successful. I don't know. But I think there are reasons to think that it could be successful for him, and an important part of how they proceed from there, because there's also simultaneous conversations that are happening for him with Iowa State players.
Yeah. And so that's the part I'm interested in as well, of how many of those players, because that's what I've been focusing on. Like, this is where I'm running around like, hey, is this, people care about this right now? Because there's all these other decisions to make, but Iowa State, if you're going to control F or control C, control V, and bring some of those players over, first off, you want to do that because if you're installing those schemes, you want players who know how to do the things that you're asking them to do, all the way down to drills. So you can have guys go through a drill and show the rest of the players from the Penn State roster, this is what we expect, this is the standard, this is how you do it, and that you don't spend time coaching a drill. You spend time drilling that drill and correcting and making sure that players know, all the way up to like, hey, if I'm in this situation and they're in this formation, what's my check to this thing? You've got somebody on the player level that knows what that answer is, and that's that communication of from two different angles, from the coach and from another player, is super important. But everyone really wants to know about what you're talking about, which is the player retention and then coach retention. So it just feels like right now all of those things are very compressed into this window. The part I think is interesting is that, I shouldn't say that. This is the time. So over the last 4 weeks, when it came to the class of 2026 and some of the things that were coming out, like I said to everybody, this is the valley. You're in the trough. This is the bad part. There will be good news eventually. And we are now in that territory. We are now in the good news cycle. Not all of it's going to be good. There are going to be players that leave, but there will be news that is X is staying, Y is staying, and Penn State's going to go get players. There's going to be activity to add to this roster. So I guess, do you expect to hear any of those names and things happening before the portal opens in January? Give fans, if they want to go to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com, or they're going to stick around here, like, you know, the viewer's guide to Christmas with Penn State and Matt Campbell, so that they know, like, we should be checking out Blue White Illustrated because we're going to find out this news at not exactly when, but like in this timeline.
Yeah, I'll just say the thing to everyone watching that I said to my wife when she looked at me very annoyed on Sunday and said, they hired the coach. Why are you working right now? And I said, this was just the first part of this. Like, the actual avalanche is on the backside of it. They're like the height is just a crescendo. You're working toward getting to the hire, but then once the hire happens, it is a crush of decisions that need to be made. And it's going to be a steady stream of that, whether it's buzz, of which there is plenty going on right now, or the actual, like, over the finish line decisions being made. Yeah, it's going to be every day. I mean, to February, like, I don't see an end to this. Like, I got some congratulatory texts over the weekend that were like, man, Nate, like, you like running the race, way to go. I was like, man, that was the warm up. And let's be honest about this. Like, I live for this. I love seeking out that information, getting that information, and passing it along. I mean, that's what we're here to do. Let's go. Join us. Yeah.
And I feel. Well, I'm going to start the show where I started. We're going to end the show where I started the show, where it's like we had an hour and there's so much stuff I wanted to talk about. We got to like half of it. So the good news is there's another show coming up tomorrow with Greg, and then there's another show on Thursday with Ryan and with Fitz. So there's more detail, more information coming. I am going to extract that from them and deliver it to you here, and hopefully an entertaining and informative way on the BWI Live show, because that's what we do. We want to give you the information and the context in a mature and responsible way, while also being incredibly childish. That's my goal every single day. So hopefully we'll have more of that coming up. I just shouldn't say hopefully. we're going to deliver that over the next couple of days. So stick around, like the video, subscribe. We got to get going so we can go get that information and give it to everyone subscribing and listening. So thank you. And we'll be back tomorrow on the BWI Live show. Talk to you then.